Hey friends, we're so glad you're here and have tuned into So What Makes You Come Alive podcast. We're your hosts, Gabe the Girl
and Michaela McGee, and we're here to explore what it would look like to take ownership of and change the narratives of our lives to live a life fully alive.
Welcome back, everybody. We are so glad to have you here and super excited to have a very multicultural guest today. I'm really excited for her to share some of her story with you guys and really what lights her up. I'm going to let Gabe take away the intro. We have beautiful Noemi today.
Thanks, Michaela. Yes, Noemi and I live actually in the same city. We met at a local coffee shop here. She and her husband live here in Santiago with their dogs and their little girl, who is the most precious. And Noemi and I are new acquaintances, but it's been really cool to get to run into them because we live in such a small city. I'm really excited to get to talk with Noemi more because I've been getting to know her and having had some different conversations with her. I was like, oh my gosh, we have to have you on the podcast to talk about you, to talk about your life, to share your story. So Noemi, would you do us a favor and just kind of share a little bit about yourself and give us a quick intro to you?
Yeah, so my life started in Eastern Europe, in Romania. Both my parents are Romanian. When I was 7 years old, we immigrated to the United States. We moved around a lot from Arizona to Georgia, the state, and then to California. I started like my adulthood in California and at LA. I lived in LA like 7 years. That's where I met my husband, Iago. We moved in together, and eventually I made the decision to move here to Spain. And once we got to Spain, I had my daughter, and like now you're up to date on my life. And inside of all of that, a lot of things happened, obviously, and like I had a career and things like that. And I actually kind of intentionally didn't talk about that because it doesn't light me up. And that's what your podcast is about, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I love meeting people from all different kinds of countries and cultures and everything, but like, what an incredible conglomeration.
Yeah. So I speak Romanian with my daughter. Me and my husband, we speak English amongst ourselves. And then his family speaks Galician. And then we live in Spain where they speak Spanish. So she's growing up with 4 languages. And I hope it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And for those who don't know, Galician is the language of this region of Spain. So many of you might know that Barcelona has its own language as well. It's Catalan. So you have Castellano, which is like the language of Spain, but then this region has a very ancient language called Galician or Galician. And it sounds very similar to Portuguese and also Spanish. It's like a big mix in there. But it's really cool that Noemi and her husband get to kind of keep that alive and in the family line.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. Oh my gosh. Woo! All right. How do we even go from there? I'm like really actually excited to dive into this. Noemi, I know that you just said that work does not light you up. So what does light you up? What makes you come alive?
Okay, it's weird. Now I think like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. I think
you can change your mind.
I love what I do, but like working, I don't know. There's this creative aspect of my work, and then there's this like very career focus of my work. And I feel like my career made me repeatedly give up things that really lit me up. Even though my career is focused on something creative work, building businesses, building software, building technology that I'm really interested in. I mean, I got interested in this stuff when I was like a kid. I never did it for money, right? I never did it because I wanted a career. I just like naturally got interested in it. And then, of course, the world like eats you up. They're like, oh, you have this talent. Like, let's make money with it. And it's like, yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
We're all human beings. You all need to like pay our rent and buy food and things like that. But I got really wrapped up into work when really what really lights me up is being creative and growing as a person too, and just like changing and evolving. And I mean, it's like a feeling of just like being balanced, being like spiritually at peace. And it doesn't feel good when I'm like off balance, and I can tell. And like the whole career focus definitely took me on a detour away from that.
Yeah.
How long ago was it when you started to realize kind of what was happening when your, work path and everything wasn't necessarily lighting you up, but that you came to that realization that you wanted to do more of what really did light you up?
Yeah, I think it was summer of 2019. I think it was like right before we moved to Spain. I guess we moved to Spain the winter of 2019. And summer of 2019, I would go out for drinks with this guy who was like more advanced in his career. And he was kind of like my future. Like I would look at him and I'd be like, oh, that's what I'm going to end up doing. I'm going to end up at the sea level, do these things. And I would always go drinking with him. And I just like, I like to drink, but he was like, he drank a little more than the average person, I guess. And I just saw his life. And even though he's a cool person and I deeply respect him and he's a friend, I was like, I just don't want this life. I don't know how to put it into words. It was like, I don't want my kids in the private school and the LA thing. And I just saw it and I was like, yikes, I don't want that. And I realized if I don't if I don't like take a detour here, that is going to be my life, because there's no other alternative. Like if you keep moving forward on this path, that is where you're going to end up. So I didn't know. I still don't know if like Spain was the right choice. I love it here, but in that moment, I had no idea. I was just like, I just need to do something different. I just need to walk in a different direction. I don't know if it's going to be right, but I just know I can't keep walking down this path.
Yeah. I mean, what an incredible opportunity to have that insight and to almost be able to see like a potential future for yourself.
Yeah.
Seems like what is that movie? A Christmas Carol?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
The Ghost of Christmas Future. Yeah, like this is what life could look like if I just keep going in this direction. And yeah, maybe you didn't know what direction to go other than like not that one anymore.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like scary. Any other direction but that one.
Yeah.
It wasn't even horrible, because his life isn't horrible. He's a happy guy. It was his choice, it's the life he wanted. It was like, don't you want to live like the greatest version of your life? Like it would have been like, okay, I would have made a lot of money. I would have, Ubered everywhere. I was Ubering everywhere, and like, and especially in that business world, there's like a lot of drinking too, which I like to drink. I always say this, like I like to drink, but since I left LA, I'm so much happier, like not being in that drinking culture. And it's funny because in Spain, there's like so much alcohol, but it's a totally different drinking culture. Like if you sit down and have a drink at a like cafe bar here, you're not going to have a second drink. Nobody has a second drink. Like if you want a second drink, you're going to walk across town to a different bar. Like that's what people do, and I'm sure there's a college here. So I'm sure the college students do binge drink and do all sorts of things, but it's just so fundamentally different. And like, when I see this stuff, when I see old people in Santiago having like a shot of vermouth or drinking whatever, I see that and I'm like, oh, that could be my future. So looks cool. That looks like a blast. I just saw 3 old men drinking aguardiente. Do you know what I'm talking about? I'm not saying it.
Is it it's a liquor?
It's like the white liquor here. It literally means hard water.
Hard water, yeah.
Firewater means firewater.
Firewater.
And you can get it with like milk, or you can get it with herbs or whatever. And I saw these like 3 old men and they all had like a different color. And I was just like, that looks great. That looks like enjoying life, and I'm gonna like go crazy, but it's just, people really know how to enjoy life here. And I think there's like, that's why it was really good for me to come here.
Yeah. Tell us more about what enjoying life looks like for you and like your desires to live more alive now that you've made the shift and you've made the transition.
Yeah, I mean, this has been kind of like I've been in the school of enjoying life in the last couple of years, because I I've worked so much, like since I was a teenager, I've been working and working crazy hours, like software hours. And I've worked for VC funded startups, and we just would work insane hours. We'd wake up, code till we fall asleep. And I like that. I was like a workaholic by choice. I mean, I just really I got a lot out of it. But I know, like, when I met my husband, he was like really good at enjoying life. And I was like, I kind of like had this like block inside of me. I'm like, is it laziness? Or is it like maybe I'm missing some bigger picture here? Because I'm like so obsessed with productivity and optimization and just being like the most whatever. And there's this story, I don't think it's real. I think it's like attributed to Mark Twain or something, but it's not real. It's like there are two people in a competition of wood cutting, and like person A, I'm sure they have a name. Person A was like chopping wood like nonstop. And they kept looking over at the other guy, and the other guy was, every time they looked over, he wasn't chopping wood, and they're like, oh man, this guy's never gonna win. But it turns out that the other guy did win, because when he wasn't chopping, he was like sharpening his tool. There's this idea of like, take a break and like sharpen your tool, sharpen your mind. And like one of the things that does light me up is being creative, creating interesting things, creating interesting technology, using technology to do good things in the world. And I feel like I had a really dull axe before I came here. I was just like pushing so hard, and I wasn't always getting the results I wanted. And sometimes I was, I mean, it depends, what, I'm not going to get into that, but I wasn't getting the results that were lighting me up. I was maybe getting the results other people wanted. And enjoying life is really like going for a walk, there's this feeling that it was very foreign to me, is like when you don't have a meeting coming up. That was really hard for me.
That's amazing.
Because I'm always like, when's my next meeting? When do I need to set an alarm? I would do crazy things. I would have, because when you're in tech, you like work with like teams from all over the world. So you'd be like, I'm going to sleep, set an alarm in 3 hours to like connect with the team in Ukraine, and then connect to the team in India. And like, like that's insane. Right. I was an insane person, and like nobody was telling me I was insane, because it was like I was in the midst of a world where I guess it was kind of normal. And everyone was like, gosh, you're such a high performer. You're like, you're just a rock star. And it's like, yeah, but like, it's insane.
It really is. But I also do feel like probably the average Western cultured person could relate to that, like to an extent that, we culturally do really value productivity way more than creativity, even though creativity leads to innovation, which actually sometimes does enhance productivity. But I think it's interesting what you were talking about with that story, that like creativity isn't something that can be forced, like you can't just keep chopping the wood and like know that something is going to come, like know that you're going to carve this amazing whatever it is. Like, sure, yeah, but it's so forced. But creativity comes from inspiration. Like you do just have to sit there, you have to sharpen your mind, you have to open yourself up to new ways of thinking, new ways of operating. Like you have to completely let yourself be open to like rewiring your entire brain. And I feel like that's what you got the opportunity to do by living in Spain, which to me is like so countercultural to what you came from with these, like, I don't know how many hours a day you were working, 24, give or take.
Yeah. Even something like the architecture in Santiago is like life-changing for me. To be able to walk outside and see medieval architecture. Some of it is like over 1,000 years old. Some of it is just from the 18th century, but it's still like it, life is you want to have good wallpaper, like you don't want to just have like the most optimized white wallpaper. Like this gets the job done. Just being able to sit in Santiago on a terrace somewhere and have a water and just sit and look and think like somebody was here 1,000 years ago. Somebody was on these cobblestones. It's like it's like living in a history book, and it's always interesting. And that has that's really enjoying life to me, because that's what you asked before. That's enjoying life to me, is having detail in life, having stories interwoven into everything.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So what inspires you or like encourages you to keep pursuing living the life that you've chosen to live and doing the things that you've chosen to give your time to?
I think that's really a good question, because just recently I kind of like realigned back to this. Like recently I found myself falling off again. And honestly, I have a bookshelf here with like all the books I've collected throughout all the years. And I randomly picked a book off the shelf yesterday, opened it to a random page, and I just read. And I have a lot of books about like mythology, spirituality, but also like hero's journey, Mircea Eliade kind of stuff.
Heck yeah.
So it's like a lot of these themes are in a lot of my books. And so this is one of the themes. Actually, the book I picked up was about like old folk tales. And I read this like folk tale that I randomly opened, and it just inspired me. And so I think like my books are a huge source of like getting me back on track. Like there's a reason I have all these books, right? There's a reason I have notes in all of them. There's a reason I'm continuously drawn to these types of books and stories. And when I read them, I'm like, oh yeah, I have to like get back to like the simple things. Like if something doesn't feel right, and this is one of the kind of the moral of the story I had read yesterday. I was like, if something doesn't feel right, you can just like walk away from it. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna walk away from a few things. I think I'm gonna get back to like less is more, and like just if only a few things feel right, I'm only gonna do those few things.
Man,
That's amazing.
I just feel like that was a mic drop moment. Like you can just walk away. Like this is it's so simple. Might be like a no duh statement, but I don't know. I mean, like maybe other people can relate to me on this one. I never felt like I could walk away. I felt like, I've gone so far down this path. This is what I've committed to. And when I have ultimately let myself walk away from certain things that really just don't fit anymore, oh my gosh, the guilt that comes with that, just like, oh, well, I invested all these years and all this time and building relationships and everything. And now I'm just like, like what?
This reminds me of this exercise I did right when I started college. I went from community college to UCLA. I was dating this guy and I was like really attached to him. And I had traveled with him, and he was like a little bit older than me. And I guess like in my mind, I had kind of thought like he helped me get into college and I owed him. And I also was like, in love with him and all these things. I made this chart. I don't know what got into me, but I made this chart of like a life tree kind of chart, like all the possibilities if I stay with him, all the possibilities if I don't stay with him. Like there's all sorts of things that could happen either way, right? And as I was drawing this out, I didn't have this intention, but at the end I was like, oh, it's obvious that like my life possibilities are just so much better if I don't stay with him. Like there's a lot of reasons he wasn't really the right fit for me. He was almost like threatened by the school I got into. There's all sorts of problems. But anyway, I drew this whole thing. And it's so funny because like 5 years later, we did end up breaking up, although I didn't do it very quickly or nicely or smoothly. It was such a pain, but we did end up breaking up. And like 5-6 years later, I found that piece of paper. And like one of the things that I had written out pretty much like
that's awesome.
The way my life went. Like I kind of predicted it. I mean, I wasn't being very specific, right? I'm not like a psychic or anything. It was just like you think about the possible things that could happen in your life, and you think, okay, if you're with someone, there's some limitations there, or maybe there's some opportunities there. It depends who you're with, right? And I found that piece of paper, and I was like, oh, I was right. Good thing I broke up with him.
That's awesome.
Totally.
But yeah, it's like it's hard to make those changes. And honestly, I probably wasn't really strong enough to do it. Like he was also kind of like, we broke up, like it was from both sides. So I'm thankful. I look back and I'm like so thankful that I got that fork in the road right.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, no kidding.
I think
oh,
go ahead. Nose goes. All right. I think something that came to mind as you were sharing, you made that tree, you kind of like projected what could possibly happen either way. Um, and the big question probably was, do I stay? Do I stay in this relationship? Do I follow what could be this future that I could foresee? Um, and then I think the question that I've thought about over the years, and something that I've also been challenged by that you reminded me of, is like, what if I don't? Like, what if I don't do the thing that I feel like I need to do? What will happen? So if I'm feeling like, yeah, I have to decide whether I'm going to do this or not. Like, what happens if I don't? What would have happened? You know now, like you saw kind of what came to be. You're like, yeah, I mean, not a psychic, but I kind of predicted where this might go, and you were brave enough to step out, knowing that, like, okay, I don't know what the other side holds, but there are many opportunities, and I want to explore those opportunities. I think that's awesome. I think, there's so many decisions that we come to in life in which maybe the better question to ask ourselves is like, so what if I don't do this thing? What then?
Yeah. We get so stuck in routine. It's hard to actually take a break. And I guess like some people do it like New Year's resolutions, at least once a year. You need to like stop and like think about what you're doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, we just like keep going and don't even realize that 50 years have passed us by.
Yeah.
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 Man. Oh my gosh. I mean, I love that. I love the idea of that, the like tree of possibilities. And I mean, I feel like that's an exercise that we could all be doing. Like you were saying, once a year doing New Year's resolutions. But even if we just sat down and we're like, okay, well, what if nothing changes for the next year? Then where will I be a year from now? But what if one thing changes, or what if that changes, or whatever? Like, realize that we do have so much power, and one tiny little change can actually drastically change the trajectory of our life. Like, even just thinking about you moving to Spain like 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, whatever, like that changed everything for you. That breaking up with that ex-boyfriend changed everything for you.
I think like a context change is massive. It's going to change everything. Change your perspective, change it's forcing you to engage with a new culture. It was really, really good for me to force myself out of my very, very comfortable context in LA.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, on that note, being out of our comfort zone, what kind of challenges have you yourself experienced in pursuing a life that actually lights you up, like choosing to make those changes?
Yeah. I mean, from the very simple of like living in a place where I don't really speak the language. And then a pandemic happened, which made it even harder to pick up the language. I had my daughter here, so having like medical appointments where I understand quite a lot, but it's been like kind of humbling, I guess, or like I feel limited in certain ways, whereas in LA, like I just feel like I could get what I wanted whenever I wanted. I kind of went from that like instant, I could order my weed on my phone, and it was like a dystopian reality, because it was just like this, and actually that was one of the things I really didn't like. I'm like, this is just too easy. It is just too easy to get whatever you want in LA. It's like, I don't want to get whatever I want. I want to like at least work for it. I want to at least I think I saw like a joke online about how like back in the day when you'd have to get weed, you'd have to like at least like entertain your dealer, like put on a cartoon or something, like you'd have to have some sort of like interaction. And now it's like an app on your phone. It was just crazy. Just enabling kind of like bad habits, I guess. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. No. Yeah, it's just everything is just a bit more just being out of my element, I guess, being not in control, really hard. Being having to kind of like let other people take the lead being in a different culture where it's like not always comfortable what the different cultural rules and mores are. Obviously, like less finances, which honestly has been the easiest part. But I thought it'd be harder, but it's just like it's a lot easier actually, because you realize how much you don't need all that stuff. You don't need to buy anything actually, like you just need food. And that's pretty cheap in Spain. But yeah, that was a huge change, but it really wasn't as hard. I think it was more mentally hard. I think it was hard to not be like earning money. Like that was a huge part of my identity of like, is like I make money, and now I don't, you know. I'm like in a transition phase. So it was hard.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the cultural shifts for sure, but I do feel like that identity shift of not necessarily being a productive contributing member of society, as my dad likes to say. I don't know if you're listening to this, Dad. Hi, I love you. But also like really, that was always how it had to be. Big air quotes there. Like you have to contribute to society by like exchanging your time for money. Like that's the only way to be of value.
You know what's funny is people always say that Americans, one of the first things they ask you is like, what do you do? Like, what's your job? And I always did that too. Like always in LA. When I meet someone, I'd be like, what do you do? And I just met someone here in Spain like last week, this really, really cool girl. She's from Madrid. And we just hung out with her for a few hours. And then we made plans to actually meet up at the coffee shop. And the next day I was like talking to Iago. I was like, yeah, the girl was really cool. I'm glad we got to know her. Now we're going to meet up with her. And that's when we realized that we have no idea what her job is. We don't know what she does. She had meant getting a PhD. So like we knew she studied something, but like and you know, she mentioned like, oh, I have to do that because of work, but we don't know what her job is. And I was like, I'm kind of proud of myself. Right. Like I've done the full cultural shift where I'm so detached from work that I didn't even bother asking her what she does.
Right. Isn't that a beautiful transition though, when you can get to that point where it's like a job does not define somebody. Yeah, sure. It's maybe something that they spend, I don't know, like 20 to 40 hours a week doing, but there are so many other hours. I don't know the answer to that. I probably should, but you know, like there's so many other hours of the days that we spend doing what we're actually passionate about, what lights us up. Like, I believe that these questions should be what people ask right as soon as you meet them, you know, like, hey, what's your name? What lights you up? Rather than what do you do? Let's
imagine where those conversations could go. Literally. I mean, I got to hear a lot about Noemi's life sitting there in the coffee shop, and you know, she's there with her daughter. And I mean, I couldn't really retell exactly what Noemi does to like other people or what she did, that she's now transitioned out of. But I know that, you know, she's lived in so many different places and she has this really amazing story, and she's such an interesting person. And it's just like, like you were saying, Michaela, it's just so much better to maybe start a conversation with like, what lights you up? Like, what are you about? Like, because everybody loves to share about the things that they're passionate about.
I just think that it opens up. It's almost like I visualize it as opening up this like portal of connecting, you know, on a soul level with somebody else. Like you're no longer having this superficial conversation about like what we do in this like three-dimensional world. You know, we go from our house to our car to an office setting. No, like what do we do while we're on this planet? Like what are we really doing here?
What are you daydreaming about when you are at work?
Truly. my next trip. That was me, you know, behind the desk for the first 2 years I had that big girl job, and you know, in that cubicle. But it's funny, you know, like I remember I purposely went out and bought fabric, like kind of that, like it was like a beige fabric with like flowers on it and stuff. And I like covered my entire cubicle in it. And then everything that I put on my cubicle walls were like postcards from places and pictures of the places. Is like, those are the things that really lit me up. And so like, you know, the mentality here that Noemi and I, you know, and Michaela, you know, when you lived in Spain, we all, you know, it was you work to live, you don't live to work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah. So Noemi, it has been such a joy to have you here to share your story. And I love that we got to have you on specifically because of, you know, all the different experiences that you've had, like international and just even tapping into kind of like that Western mindset. And then, being somebody here that has experienced something different and getting to share all the things that were challenging, but like making those changes. And I mean, at least one of the things that I'm taking away from you was that like, you can choose the things that make you come alive and choose to really hold on to those things and make those a huge part of your life. But what other encouragement or like wisdom nugget would you give to anybody that was desiring to live a life that's fully lit up?
I would say don't let advice derail you. I've gotten a lot of bad advice throughout my life, and I think it's really hard to get good advice. And sometimes people have really good intentions and they're telling you like what to do, maybe is what they wish they would have done, but you have to live with the consequences of your actions. So you make the best decision for yourself.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Well-meaning family, well-meaning friends, but you are the writer of your own story.
Oh.
And you have to live it. Not those other people. That's true. I love it.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
so great.
Man. It's like you just like had that one in your back pocket ready to go.
No, I think about it, dude. I think about this stuff. So I'm a mom now. Like I just think about it all the time. About my daughter. I'm like, tell her like she can't talk yet, but I'm always like thinking like how can I help her succeed? And I think like I probably have no good advice for her. Like she's gonna have to figure out her own thing.
Yeah. Well, she'll have you there to like empower and encourage her along the way.
That's your job, is be the encourager. Yeah.
There you go. It's amazing.
Oh my gosh, this has been awesome. I just want to like go to Santiago and like hang out with you guys in person.
I mean, you are more than welcome.
I would love to meet you in person.
Yeah. I'll just check with Jimmy, see if he's cool with taking care of the dogs for a little while. I'm sure he'll be fine.
Perfect. Well, hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in to So What Makes You Come Alive. We're so glad we got to chat with Noemi today. And if you have any questions for Noemi or any questions for us, we'd love to answer those for you. You can drop a comment on Instagram or Facebook. We're going to link you to some contact information for Noemi. She's in the Twitter sphere, but we are not yet. And I don't know when or if we will ever be in the Twitter sphere, but
it's
not my zone of genius.
It is not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
I think I left the Twitterverse back in 2015. So
I was never there.
Not quite sure what my last tweet even was. But yeah, we'd love to connect you to Noemi if you're interested in getting in contact with her. And let us know what stuck out to you, what resonated with you, what are you encouraged by, what challenges are you yourself trying to overcome and trying to pursue a life fully lit up. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Thrive Fully Alive, or shoot us an email at thrivefullyalive@gmail.com. Until next time. Adios.
Bye,
Ciao.
Thanks for tuning in to So What Makes You Come Alive. We're so inspired by the conversations we get to have with everyday humans about what lights them up and how to love the story they're living. We hope that you feel just as inspired too.
Interested in getting in on the inspiration? Click the link in our Instagram bio at Thrive Fully Alive and select the option for The One About You. Be our guest. Remember to tune in each week for a new episode where we explore what it looks like to get back to living our best story, where we hope that your favorite story becomes your own.